Today, for the first time, the National Grid has asked paying customers to cut back on energy consumption between 5 and 6 p.m. But why, might you ask? It's because the struggling wannabe green grid is struggling to keep up with energy usage during this cold snap, and they've asked for old coal-fired power stations to be warmed up in case they need some backup. Who would have thought that when the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow, the turbines won't turn and we would be stuck for green energy? On a good day, solar and wind generate more than 50% of our energy needs. But this morning, at 10 a.m., it was down to 19%, and at times in December, it fell to less than 2%. We are lucky at the moment that we have the option of coal mines to back us up, but what happens in 2030, when another cold winter faces us? Will we, the masses, be told to sit in the cold and dark for a minuscule amount of money, the greater good of the world, while those who can afford to keep the heat and lights on go unaffected? And all the while, China and Russia and India burn up as much fossil fuels as they like. The head of National Control said that a push for net zero means customers will have to be more flexible. And when asked if this could become a feature of British life, he told the BBC it's something we strongly believe in. We reached out to the National Grid to comment, but we sadly didn't get a reply, maybe because we asked between the hours of 5 and 6 p.m. Anyway, joining me now is nuclear and power market policy analyst Malcom Grimston. Malcolm, should the poorest in society have to turn off their heat?
Well, it's not just the poorest, of course, with electricity bills where they are at the moment. A lot of us are feeling the pain. Ultimately, we are where we are. We've not invested in reliable power capacity for 20 years now in the UK. We've got a new nuclear station at last under construction, for example. But that does mean that if you, as you pointed out earlier, at this moment, we're getting about 10% of our electricity from wind, nearly 60% from gas. Gas is very expensive, so we're bringing back, or talking about possibly bringing back online our coal stations. So, I mean, it's more sensible if you can actually return some money to those who are less well off. But as with all things in life, it's the less well off who get hammered the most when the system doesn't work. And
especially with ideologically driven policies like zero anything, you know, the poorest have been hit the hardest through all of these zero policies. Why are we attacking the poor in this way?
Well, I don't think that's the aim of it, to be fair. And I do think the science on climate change is very difficult to challenge. The argument is, firstly, where do we get the balance between adapting to it and mitigating it in the language right? And can we do it in ways that don't hammer the poor? At the moment, with gas prices where they are, frankly, the more wind, the better on the system, because that will help all of us.
But it's freezing cold and there's no wind.
But that is the problem, and that's why you do need the reliable technologies. I've mentioned nuclear. Offshore wind's a bit better than onshore wind. But we also have to look at what they call the supply side and where it makes sense. I mean, I don't think it's so much a matter of people switching the heating off, but if you can delay, say, using the washing machine for a couple of hours so we get over the peak in the evening, that seems...
But why should we do that? It's 2023. Do you remember in the 50s and stuff when they invented these things, everyone was like, yeah, you can now free up some time to do something with your own life. And now we're turning around to people and saying, excuse me, your kids have just got home from school, don't use a dishwasher.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like, come on.
As I say, we should have been preparing for this moment. We got ourselves over-dependent on Russian gas. We got ourselves in a position where we weren't replacing the nuclear capacity, and we moved away from, coal is environmentally pretty horrible, not just in climate change terms, but in terms of the effect on coal mining, the particulates that are released into the atmosphere that are really very unpleasant, acid rain. I think for environmental reasons...
The acid rain thing I never quite got the acid rain thing, because I was expecting to melt and my house to melt, but it never happened.
Acid rain was different. Acid rain was sulphur in the coal, not carbon. Right. That dissolves in rain, and in effect you get sulphuric acid falling from the sky.
Which would dissolve the statue of the paedophile outside the BBC.
Well, it does dissolve buildings, but it's also not very good for the sea, and it's not very good for woods or forests. And so we've come a long way on that. But moving away from coal where possible was great. Gas has been the wonder fuel for the last 20, 30 years. It's clean, it's easy to use, you can store it easily if you choose to. And it's about half as much carbon for coal. So gas, at least as a transition fuel, is important. And the point with gas is you can switch it on and off. But as you say, we became enormously dependent on Russian gas. We didn't develop our own domestic reserves in a way that perhaps we should have done. And as a result, when the Russians stopped playing ball with us, we've been hammered in the way that we have over the last few months.